Thanks so much for that, Heather. Right, to our leading story this morning. A US federal court has blocked most of Donald Trump's tariffs, his Liberation Day tariffs. They say he's overstepped his mark. Carolyn Levitt, White House press sec, not happy.
President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. Three judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him.
So you've got the president waging a trade war on the rest of the world and now having to go to war with the courts. They're saying they're going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court because they don't want this federal court to have any say. US correspondent Mitch McCann, feature story news with us live this morning. Mitch, what's the reaction like to that here? There, rather. Mitch, if you can hear me, what has the reaction been in the United States to what's happening from this court in New York?
I have you now. Good afternoon from New York, Ryan. Look, this is a significant setback for Donald Trump and his economic agenda. And of course, his second term in office. This has really been one of the centerpieces of his agenda more generally here in the United States. So you talked about Liberation Day. This could be called Disaster Day for Donald Trump because the majority of these tariffs are going to be blocked for at least the next short while this goes through the courts. And I think you can see from what the White House is saying how aggressive they've been, how defensive they've been about this, how upset they are about what's happened. Essentially, what Donald Trump did was he circumnavigated Congress and used emergency powers to implement these tariffs in the first place. Now, the panel, one of those judges, his authority here, and he can't just enact a national emergency and then put tariffs on other countries. They say that the federal deficit is not a national emergency. In fact, it's been in place for up to 4 decades. So they've really suggested that Donald Trump has overstepped his authority here. And as you've just heard from Caroline Levitt, they have hit back really hard at this.
It's what it's always been about, isn't it? Trump says this is, the debt is so bad that it is a national security issue. It does warrant these extreme measures. But now clearly, by the way, this court is such an obscure little court in New York, on the back end of New York. No one really heard of it before. This goes all the way to the Supreme Court. When do we get certainty, do you think?
Well, that's the big question. We don't know if the Supreme Court actually is going to take this up. The White House says that on Friday they are going to request the Supreme Court take this case up. They're going to take it straight to the top. They're going to supersede other courts that would hear this first. But the reality is the Supreme Court has to say, yes, we are going to take it up. They could turn around and say, no, Donald Trump, we're not going to do that. We're going to go let it through the other courts first. Obviously, Trump doesn't want that to happen. The other thing we have to watch out here for is ways around this. The White House right now will be huddling, looking at other laws, other pieces of legislation they could use to enact these tariffs. Now, it's important to note as well for our viewers and listeners that this isn't all the tariffs. It is the tariffs from Liberation Day on the 2nd of April, but some tariffs are still in place, like the steel and aluminium tariffs he brought in around the same time, tariffs that he also had in his first term. So while it's not all tariffs, it is the majority. So I think the two things to look out for are whether or not the US Supreme Court actually takes this case up and whether or not the White House can find some other laws to reinstate these tariffs.
But also, what do the countries who are currently negotiating with the White House do about this? Do you say, actually, we don't need to negotiate anymore because you potentially don't even have the power to do the things that you say you want to do? And then you've got countries like the UK who've already done deals on the basis potentially of illegal tariffs.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because they're already in these talks. I know Japan's been talking, Korea, Germany, and we've heard some feedback from European partners today. The European Commission says it's not going to comment on this. Germany says it's not going to comment either as they try and work out what happens. The UK, who've already signed a deal, as you mentioned, say this is a domestic matter for the United States. They're probably sitting there thinking, oh, maybe we should have waited a couple of weeks here. But the reality is some of these other countries doing deals with the United States may have more leverage now. And the problem is for investors, this could drag on throughout the year, throughout the courts, and takes away any certainty they thought they might have. So then the markets react. So it is quite a mess. and the White House is really trying to react and calm fears of their own supporters who voted for this.
Mitch, appreciate your time. That's Mitch McCann, our feature story news editor and our correspondent in the US this morning. It's just gone 10 after 7.